A king once claimed to be God himself, and within moments, he was being eaten alive by worms while thousands watched in absolute horror. This gruesome death is recorded in the Bible, and the circumstances surrounding it reveal something terrifying about divine judgment that most people never realize. But what makes this story even more shocking is what this king had done just days before his horrifying demise. Keep watching, because the details of this ancient event will send chills down your spine and show you why some lines should never be crossed. King Herod Agrippa was at the height of his power, ruling over Judea with an iron fist. He had just finished persecuting Christians, executing James, the brother of John, and throwing Peter into prison. The people loved him for his cruelty toward the early church, and Herod was drunk on their praise and admiration. But on this particular day, something happened that would change everything forever. Dressed in royal robes made of silver that sparkled in the sunlight, Herod appeared before a massive crowd to give a speech. As he spoke, his voice echoed across the amphitheater, and the crowd began shouting something that would seal his fate. They cried out, "This is the voice of a god, not of a man." And here is where the story takes a terrifying turn. Instead of rejecting this blasphemous praise, King Herod accepted it. He allowed people to worship him as a deity, basking in their adoration and refusing to give glory to the one true God. The Bible tells us that immediately, an angel of the Lord struck him down. But this was not a quick, merciful death. This was divine judgment in its most terrifying form. Worms began eating Herod from the inside out while he was still alive and conscious. Can you imagine the agony? The king, who moments before was receiving worship like a god, was now writhing in unbearable pain as his own body became his tomb. Witnesses described the scene as absolutely horrifying, with the proud king screaming in agony as the worms consumed his flesh. What makes this account even more chilling is that these were not ordinary worms. Historical records suggest they were a specific type of parasite that eats human tissue from within, causing excruciating pain while keeping the victim conscious throughout the process. This was divine retribution for a man who had placed himself above God and persecuted those who served the true King of Kings. Think about how quickly everything changed for Herod. One moment he was receiving worship from thousands. The next moment he was dying in the most gruesome way imaginable. This biblical account serves as a stark reminder that there are consequences for those who oppose God and claim His glory for themselves. Have you ever witnessed someone who seemed untouchable suddenly face consequences for their actions? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this type of divine justice still operates in our world today. The death of King Herod sent shockwaves throughout the Roman Empire and the early Christian Church. Those who had been persecuted saw this as clear evidence that God was fighting for them. The same power that struck down a king who claimed to be God was the same power protecting and strengthening the followers of Jesus Christ. But here is what many people miss about this story. Herod's death was not just punishment. It was also liberation for countless believers who had been living in fear of his persecution. Sometimes God's judgment serves multiple purposes, removing obstacles while simultaneously encouraging those who remain faithful to him. The account of King Herod being eaten alive by worms remains one of the most vivid examples of divine judgment in human history. It reminds us that no earthly power, no matter how mighty, can stand against the sovereignty of God. Pride, blasphemy, and persecution of God's people will eventually meet with divine justice, often in ways that are both swift and terrifying. If this incredible biblical account opened your eyes to the reality of divine justice, subscribe and turn on notifications, because we uncover these powerful truths that will strengthen your faith and understanding. What other examples of biblical justice would you like us to explore next time?